Good day, everyone. Hello, everyone. I'm going to give everyone just a little bit of time to get on here. I'm doing a super impromptu live today. And let me just make sure all the technology is working. Okay, it looks like it is. Would you put in the chat just to make sure that you can see and hear me? This is a super impromptu live that I'm doing. So there was not very much, there's essentially no planning to it. I just had an inspiration and I thought, in life, what happens to us a lot is we get ideas and stuff that we want to do, and then we don't act on it right away. And when that happens, like the inspiration is lost, the idea is lost. Okay. Hey, James. All right. James says he can see and hear me. So great. All right. Well, thank you. So let me start then formally. I journeyed yesterday to Las Vegas, Nevada. And Las Vegas is my favorite place on the planet. And I had some really interesting things happen before I left for my trip and then while I was on the trip. And so I thought I would share some. So one thing is going to be about reliability, but the other two things are going to be more about life, about being human, and about our productivity. Okay, let me see. There's another comment here. And thank you, Kenan. Thanks for joining us. And if you want to put in the chat where you're joining us, where you're joining me from, that would be great. Mosin, thank you so much. Okay, so I'm going to dive right in. The first thing I want to talk about is productivity. And before this trip, I got done, this is no joke, I got done in 2 days what I probably would normally get done in 1 week. So there is an incredible thing about leaving for a vacation or leaving just maybe for a business trip. There's something about that, there's stuff we have to get done because we're going to be gone for a certain period of time. So we really put our nose to the grindstone and we get it done. And that happened to me. The 2 days before I left, I got up at 3 a.m. Both days. I really like getting up early because during that early morning time, it's like the rest of the world is sleeping. And there's something about the vibration and the frequency of the world at that time. It's just kind of quiet and I can think a lot better and I can focus. So I had a list, no joke. I should have had it here to just hold up. I probably had like 25 things I had to do. Now, a lot of those things were relatively quick, but there were several of those things on the list where it would take several hours to do. But they had to be done before I left. Now, one technique that I used was this. I don't know if you've heard, but I've heard other people say, you should make a list of 6 things that you want to get done in a day and don't do anything else until you do those. Well, that never really worked for me because as I was making my list of 6 things, I would end up with like 15 things on my list and I would get so overwhelmed that I didn't do anything. So I used a new technique. And what I did is from my list of my 25 things I had to do, I chose the 2 most important things and I made a list of 2 things. And I started on the first one and I didn't lose my focus for anything until that was done. And then I would check it off and then cross it off and go to the next one. And when that was done, I would check it off and I would cross it off because there's big satisfaction in getting it crossed off. So with only having 2 things on my list, it made me feel less overwhelmed. Now, the other thing I noticed is this. I realized that I have a habit, and I'm wondering maybe if you can put in the comments if you have this habit too. I realized while I was in this mad rush to get all this stuff done that what I normally do is I break my train of thought because I stop and I look at email, or I look at notifications on LinkedIn, or, I don't know, there's a phone call coming in. I noticed that I'm normally very distracted. So I learned that about myself. So because I only had these 2 days to get these 25 things done, I had no choice but to eliminate the distractions. Okay, so the other thing is I no joke probably worked at least 12 hours for those 2 days right before I left, and it was hardcore focused work. I have to be honest with you, I'm exhausted, but it made me step back and think about this thing about productivity. And let me just pause for a second because, okay, James, you're joining us from Ohio, Nora, St. Louis, and Jose from Portugal. Welcome. Okay. Thank you for joining me. So it made me realize something so number one, we are human beings. We are not robots. So we cannot get up at 3 a.m. every day and work for 12 hours with with very short breaks or without any long breaks. We cannot do that in the long term, but we can do it in the short term. Okay, so that's number one. The other thing that I learned about myself, that I've known it, but I don't know, I guess I just forgot about it or I lost it. And it's this: I am capable of doing more than I normally do on a day-to-day basis. And so I think when we hear people talk about success and we hear people talk about productivity, what kind of dawned on me is that I think we probably are all capable of more. And maybe, getting up an hour earlier, or maybe trying what I did with just putting two things on the list and not allowing yourself to be distracted. Because when you have to get something done, right, as human beings, when we have to get something done, we get it done. So imagine if I worked that way in my everyday normal life, not getting up at 3 a.m. every day and working 12 hours, because again, we're not robots. We can't function like that without a break. But if I did a little bit more of it, because I've got a project that I've had on my list, it's maybe like a year and a half now, and I've not done it yet. And I have finally, I've committed to myself. I have made the decision to get it done, and I'm going to use some of these techniques to get it done. So before we leave productivity, I want to mention one thing. And I learned about this a long time ago, but I'm finally learning how to overcome it. And it's this word comfort. Now, when I was a little girl, my brother Albert, when I was in 8th grade, he gave me a book called The Prophet by Khalil Gibran, Kahlil Gibran. Here, I'll write it down. Khalil Gibran. Now, what Khalil Gibran has to say about comfort is this: comfort, that stealthy thing that enters the home a guest, and then it becomes a host, and then it becomes a master. And with a hook and a whip, it makes puppets of our larger desires. So I really get what that means now, because as human beings, I think to a large degree, we are often lulled into comfort. I think that there's comfort in distractions, like looking at LinkedIn notifications and looking at email, or, I don't know, just kind of surfing social media or walking around and, having a chat with somebody. There's comfort in that because it takes us away from those projects, from those things that we want to achieve that make us stretch, that maybe make us feel uncomfortable. So what I've learned is that as human beings, when we feel uncomfortable, we're really onto something. And so comfort is something we need to experience as human beings, because we're not robots. We have to rest, we have to have downtime, and we have to have relaxation. But it has to be earned, because I don't know, maybe you can put in the chat if you've experienced this. where you've maybe you're sitting on the couch and you're just watching TV, or you're scrolling through emails or whatever, but you're not relaxing, you're procrastinating. And there's something about that when you're doing that, when you're procrastinating, you're not even relaxing, because it's kind of like you're berating yourself in your own mind. Why are you sitting here, laying here? You need to be doing X, Y, and Z. But when you've put in the hours, when you've achieved a goal, when you've finished a project, whatever it might be, whether it's personal or professional, and now you lay down on the couch to watch some mindless television, it feels good and it feels well earned. So that's my tip about productivity and about comfort. Let me see. I'm going to pause and look in the chat. Hi, Freddie. You're joining me from Bogota, Colombia. Thank you for joining me. Okay, so tell me. I don't know if you have any thoughts. Tell me what you think about the comfort thing, and if that has ever happened to you, or if you've ever experienced anything like that. Okay, the next thing, now I want to talk about reliability, and I'm going to share my screen. And like I mentioned, I'm on vacation and I only have one screen. So I'm using StreamYard to come live. So once I share, I'm not going to be able to see myself. So let's just see if this works. You're welcome, Freddie. Thank you for joining me. Okay, let's see. I want to share PowerPoint. Why isn't it showing? Okay, never mind. We're going to do it this way. I'm just going to hold up my phone to the camera. So I get to the airport yesterday, and I get to the top of the escalator. Let me make it so you can see it there we go. And I get to the top of the escalator at the airport, and there's this sign, and it says social distance, and you can see these 3 X's, right? Where they're saying the CDC says to keep the Center for Disease Control, to keep a safe distance of 3 seats. In other words, keep 6 feet between you and the next person, right? Separate and sanitize. CDC, safe distance 6 feet. So this is not a live broadcast about COVID, because it's a very controversial issue, and I'm not going there. I have to live in this world, and I do what I have to do to live. But the only thing about this just didn't make any common sense to me, because these signs are all over the airport, and number one, there aren't enough seats to keep 3 seat distance. But the other thing is, I'm thinking to myself, CDC guidelines keep 6 feet from the person next to you. But meanwhile, in 30 minutes, you're going to jam pack us into this sardine can where we're going to be shoulder to shoulder with the people next to us. So it just didn't make any sense. And, the other thing is, on the plane, with snacks and drinking, now the rule is you can drink and you can eat, but between sips and bites, you have to put your mask back on. So now here are all these people. We're touching stuff in the airport. We're touching things on the airplane, and then we're touching our mask and going back and forth. And again, this isn't about COVID. I'm not going there. I'm just talking about common sense, because that doesn't make common sense to me. And that's what reminded me about reliability, because I remember one time when I was collaborating with the Royal Navy about reliability centered maintenance, Commander Andrew Mattis, he was the head of the Royal Navy's reliability centered maintenance program. And he leaned in, we were having a team dinner one night, and he leaned in and he said, Nancy, reliability centered maintenance is nothing more than common sense applied to physical assets. And I never forgot that. And so when I read the sign and all this, it brought that back and brought me back to reliability. Now, specifically, when it comes to reliability centered maintenance, in order to assign a maintenance task in the context of reliability, it has to There are two criteria that need to be satisfied. Number one, it has to technically be the right thing to do. And number two, it has to be worth doing. So I want to talk about technically feasible or technically appropriate maintenance. So for example, let's just take a simple example. In my 2014 Subaru Forester, I never replaced the starter motor. Now, the reason I never replace the starter motor, unless it fails, is because it fails randomly. So it wouldn't serve me to do a scheduled replacement on my starter motor, right? If I could, now my Subaru Forester is a 2014, so it's 7 years old, and the starter has never failed. So if I were to replace that today, let's just say I decided to, that does not guarantee me that it's going to last another 7 years because it's a random failure. And random means it has the same chance of failing today as it does tomorrow or next week or next year. So one of the things when we assign a maintenance task appropriately as responsible custodians, we have to make sure that it's technically the right thing to do. Now, I replace the oil in my car every 7,500 miles. That's because it is technically the right thing to do because it has a useful life, right? Let me just draw this failure pattern. I told you this is a really impromptu live. Okay, so let's look at this failure pattern where the x-axis is age and the y-axis is the conditional probability of failure. So on the condition that my oil survives to 7,500 miles, I know that the probability of failure is going to start to drastically increase, right? Because eventually oil is going to, additives are going to be depleted, and it's not going to be able to lubricate my engine components properly. Therefore, I change the oil, or I have it changed, every 7,500 miles. I don't replace the starter motor. I don't replace the starter every 7,500 miles because it's a random failure. But I do change the oil every 7,500 miles because it's an age-related failure and it's technically the right thing to do. So there you have it. Even when it comes to reliability, we can use our common sense. All right. Any questions or thoughts about that? Just put it in the chat. I'm going to make sure everything's going all right. And if you can also just make sure you can still see and hear me, if you can put that in the chat. Mahmoud, thank you for joining me from Egypt. One of my life's, I will call it a goal, not a dream, because I'm going to make it happen. I really want to visit Egypt one day. It's been a dream of mine for a long time. When I was a little girl, believe it or not, I wanted to be an Egyptologist. I don't know how it happened that I became an engineer, but well, that's another story. Okay. Now I want to talk about one more. The last thing I want to talk about is right here. I want to talk about life, because now let's talk about this. I was listening to a presentation. It was actually, I was just kind of surfing the internet and I happened upon this presentation about, the title was your thoughts can change your life. And it was given by a Hindu monk. And in that presentation, he talked about duality. And that in the universe, in the world we live in, there is duality. There is positive and there's negative. And there is sickness and there's wellness, right? There is up and there's down. And there are bad times and there are good times. And the point is that you cannot have one without the other. So the way our world goes round is that the duality exists. And sometimes it's not easy to live in that world with duality, but it does. So I was just thinking about this. It was just a random thought that popped into my head that I started thinking about duality. And Brother Anandamoy was the name of the Hindu monk. And I thought to myself, well, it applies to human beings, right? Because as human beings, we can look at a situation and we can see the good or we can see the bad. We can perceive it in a good way or we can perceive it in a bad way. And I thought to myself, okay, I'm just going to challenge myself and I'm going to be positive today. I'm going to behave positively. I'm going to be helpful if I can. And instead of being cynical, because we all can be, right? I'm generally a very positive person, but I mean, I can be cynical too. We all can, right? And it's just it I don't know why, but it's easier to see the negative as opposed to seeing the positive. I don't know why it's set up this way, but it is. But I said to myself, I'm going to be positive and I'm going to think positively and I'm going to perceive positively and see how it affects my life. So, okay. So I get to my first connection and I get to the Denver airport and I'm sitting there and I'm very much like a list person and I like to be prepared, especially when I travel. I carry various things just in case something happens. And one thing I carry with me all the time is paper towels. And so I was actually on the phone. I was on a business call. I was talking about something, and this woman, several seats down from me. This is just we're in the in the gate area. The poor thing, she opens up this Coke, and it just explodes, right? And it goes all over her, and I can see her like she's got this exasperated expression, and she has no napkins or anything. And I'm on the phone, but I got my paper towels in my bag, so I grab them and I carry on with my call and I give her the paper towels and she just looks at me like, "Oh, thank you." And I don't know, I mean, that just kind of made me feel good. So that was the first thing. I probably would have done that anyway, even if I hadn't done this positive thing. But that was the first positive thing. Okay. The next thing is I went to buy a snack in a store, and this nice guy was in front of me checking out at the store at the airport, and he asked the lady at the counter if they sold pencils. And what goes through my mind is, why? That's strange. Why do you want a pencil? It was just like what went through my mind. And the woman at the cash register said, "Oh, I'm sorry, we don't have pencils, but we have plenty of pens." And he says, "Oh, no, I just need a pencil." And I thought, well, I carry all kinds of things when I travel. And I thought, well, I have a mechanical pencil in my bag and I don't really need it. So I looked at the guy and I said, "I have a pencil if you want it." And he kind of looked at me at first a little strange, like, why are you even talking to me? Because I think the norm today, especially with COVID, where we're supposed to be socially distanced and everything, people, I think we're less social lately. And he kind of looked at me and I said, "I got a pencil, you can have it if you want it." And he said, "Well, we really want to do this crossword puzzle." And I said, "Yeah, you can have it." So I dug it out of my suitcase and I gave him a pencil. And what I noticed about myself is, okay, the paper towel thing and then the pencil thing, and I started to feel better about me. And my mood, I felt happy. I felt good. And actually, I will tell you, the phone call that I was on was because in our building, the roof is leaking and it's annoying and it's frustrating, especially because I'm going on vacation and now I have to deal with a leaking roof. So that was frustrating. But it was like the goodness that I was doing was canceling out that negative part. So I was helping myself along the way and I was helping other people, even though it was just a pencil and a paper towel. Okay, so now here's another one. Now we're ready to board the airplane from Denver to Las Vegas. And there's a line for boarding zone A and boarding zone B. And I was in boarding zone B, and I happened to be the first one who lined up in the B line. And so all the A people were already on, and they were just about to call B. And this guy rolls up right in front of the A line. And I'm going to be honest with you, the first thought I had is, well, look at this sneaky thing trying to, cut the line, because now the B line is probably 20 or 30 deep. And the first thought, like in a nanosecond, was, look at this guy trying to cut the line. And immediately I said, not today. Today I'm being positive and I'm going to give people the benefit of the doubt. So they called zone B, and I purposely didn't move to see if he was gonna, rush, and really just to let him go. I mean, it doesn't change my life any, just, go. It's okay. So I paused for a couple of seconds and he didn't move. So I looked at him and I said, go ahead. And so he said, really? And I said, yeah. And he said, wow, thank you. So he didn't, and I don't think he intended to cut the line. I think he intended to wait until all the B people, boarded and then he would go. He just didn't feel like going and walking in the back of the line. So I let him go. And the guy behind me gets really nasty. And he says to this guy, wow, maybe I should try that next time. That's a great way to cut the line and, not have to wait. And he starts going off being like super negative. Well, I stayed out of that because in my mind, what I wanted to do was turn around and say, take a chill pill, buddy. But I didn't. I just let that guy go. And then as we were walking down the jetway, we had to wait because there were other people. There was a line getting onto the plane. And the guy turned around and he said, thank you. That was really nice of you. He said, I really wasn't trying to cut the line. He said, I really wasn't sure what was going on. And I said, no problem at all. It's no big deal. We're all going to the same place here. So anyway, that was just another positive thought. But the other thing is it's an example of duality where I could have been nasty too. I could have just like immediately rushed, or I could have given him a dirty look or something like that. But I chose this instead of this. But the guy behind me chose this. So, normally when someone is kind of cranky, it can make you feel ugly too. But I think that my positive action and the guy in front of me being grateful canceled out all that negative vibration and frequency of the guy behind me, because I just paid him no attention at all. And I started to feel better and better. Okay, I got another one. So now here's another example. So I'm in my row and I'm on the aisle. And there is an older couple, maybe I would say late 70s, next to me. The wife is next to me and the husband is sitting at the window. And now it's like the last people are boarding and the overhead space is nearly all taken. And this young man comes on board. I don't know how old he was. I would maybe guess about 22. But he was very nice and he was very respectful. And he's got a rollerboard, like a carry-on, and he's looking, and there's a spot up here that has a bag, but it's small, and there's a small bag over here. So if you move this small bag into this space, then he could put his suitcase up. So he says, whose bag is this? Can I move this? And the guy in the window seat in my row says, don't you touch my bag. And he started to get very upset. Don't touch that bag. Don't move that bag. And the young man said, well, sir, can I just move it over here so I can put my bag? He said, don't touch my bag. And then a woman next to the young man said, sir, he just wants to move your bag so he can fit his. So he stands up and he goes, I'll move my own damn bag. And he doesn't even give me a chance to get up. He just kind of climbs over me. So he's rude. He's mean. It's in Alabama, we would say he was ugly, not ugly face-wise, but he was just acting ugly. So he like climbs his way over me. And now he gets his bag and he puts it in the other spot that it can clearly fit. But he declares, this is what he says, that's not going to fit. And he takes it and he puts it back in that spot. And he climbs back over me and sits down. And he says to the young man, next time, either pay so you can board earlier or get here earlier. And then he had the Wall Street Journal and he like snapped it like this. And he went back to reading. And his wife leaned over and said, I'm sorry. And I'm thinking, that's okay. So number one, with that guy, he was here, right? Now, the young man, the way he responded is he actually laughed, not in a condescending way. He just kind of chuckled because it's such a stupid thing. Just put your bag in the other bin. It's not a big deal. So he just laughed about it. He ended up going to the back of the plane. He found a spot and finally made his way back. And was there for the flight, but no one around us, yelled at the guy or said anything. So again, it was like you could just feel that the negative energy, it just immediately dissipated, because all of us around, the way the young man handled it is he just kind of laughed about it, which was, I think that was a really nice way to handle it. Okay, so that's that example. Um, so so now I'm feeling even better, because now I've got these other people who didn't get into, you see things on social media and YouTube where people are losing it on planes, because travel is not easy, especially these days. So people can lose their temper. And one more thing I wanted to mention is the other reason why it's important to consciously stay here and not here is, that guy was really cranky. And I mean, he was downright mean. But the other thing is, maybe he didn't feel well. Maybe they were on their way. Maybe they've got a sick relative. Um, Maybe they've got something serious going on in their lives. I mean, maybe he's just a cranky old man. That could be. But maybe he's got something going on. So it's just a nice thing to remain positive and um, be kind, and be grateful for what you have, and be kind to those around you, because sometimes people have things going on, and when they do, and the other thing I witnessed for myself, I knew this, but it was a big reminder for me yesterday, is that a positive energy, it negates the negative. It absolutely does, right? And we can get all into physical, right? Not physical. We can get all into physics, which maybe I'll do another live about this. I won't go into it today, but I'll just mention it. Where our thoughts and our actions, that's energy. And we know from physics that energy has a frequency. I'm sorry, energy is vibration, and that vibration emits a frequency. So if you think about it that way, with the way that you're conducting yourself, and not even just in public, just when you're with your own self, right? Think about the thoughts that we say to us. Oh, I was so stupid. Oh, why didn't I do that? Blah, blah, blah. All that negative stuff, that's emitting a negative frequency, right? And you attract the same thing. That's a whole other live, but I just wanted to mention that I could feel the positiveness negating it. So it was a really it was a wonderful experience. So that's the whole piece of life. Now I have one more thing to share with you, but I want to put this up. So I mentioned that with respect to the productivity, there is a project I have been, I guess you could say, procrastinating or making excuses. Oh, I don't have time, right? I don't have time. I'm too busy. I have all these things going on. Well, you want to know what? I proved to myself that when I put my nose to the grindstone, I'm capable of doing more in a day than I am used to doing. So I've got a project that I've been wanting to do forever, and it's along these lines, right? I relate it to reliability, but it's not about machines. Well, it is about a machine. It's about our machine as a human being and our inner success mechanism. And it's something that I've got all worked out in my mind. It's just not in physical form yet, but it's going to be soon. So if any of this stuff is interesting to you, or you're just curious, you go to this URL, rcmtrainingonline.com/crush-the-obstacles, and just sign up for notifications. That's all it is. You just put your name and email in, and I will keep you updated on what I'm doing. And I'm definitely going to go live and do more of this kind of stuff, because the way that I conducted myself yesterday helped me immensely. And I think it probably even indirectly helped those around me, because just me being positive and conducting myself, just consciously making sure I did my best in every situation, I think that helps out everyone around us, right? Because I'm emitting a frequency, right? When we're nasty or ugly in our mind, we're emitting a frequency, and not a good one. Okay, so I want to finish with this. Um, I went, so my husband is coming, but he's not coming until probably late tomorrow. So I'm on my own for 2 days. And so I went out to eat last night and I let myself have, oh my gosh, it was so good. I let myself, okay, hold on. I went to one of my favorite restaurants, and it's Joe's Seafood. It's in the Forum Shops in at Caesars in Las Vegas, in the Forum Shops. And oh my gosh, I was starving because I had not all I had was an apple on the plane that I had brought with myself in a yogurt. So I was starving by the time 5 o'clock rolled around. And they had a delicious beet salad on the menu. So I had a beet salad. And another thing, it was like my day to be positive and to do things a little differently and better, to be a better human yesterday. So I said to myself, what I'm going to do is oh, Freddie, thank you for putting that URL in the comments. So now all you have to do is click on it. Thank you so much. um, I said to myself, every now and then, especially when I'm on travel, when you go on travel and you're alone, you have to eat by yourself. And what's the first thing you do? You pick up you pick up your phone. Um, I, I love technology and I would not want to live without it, but it can be very intrusive in our lives to us just personally because it's a huge distraction, right? Notifications, especially social media, email, all these things. It's like you can't just sit for an hour and work on a project without this thing dinging. That's why you have to just consciously put it on silent mode, which is what I did the 2 days before I came here. But it's a distraction personally, and it's also a distraction to those around you. Just with like your spouse or your friends, you go out to any restaurant and you look around, and there will be a couples eating, two people eating, or even like a party of six. And most of them, this is what they're doing. They're on their phone, so they're absorbing this stuff, and they're missing what's happening going on right in front of them. So I said to myself, I'm going to make it through this whole meal and I'm not going to look at my phone once. I'm just going to be in the moment. We hear about, we've heard, I mean, you hear that from lots of different places, from lots of different people that, wherever you go, be there and especially be in the moment. And it would not be possible for me to be in the moment with this delicious food while I'm on my phone because we're humans. And if we're focusing on all this stuff and I'm eating, but I'm likely not really tasting the food because my senses are largely devoted to what's going on this screen. So I said to myself, I'm going to have this whole meal without um, without looking at my phone. So I ordered a glass of wine and I had some wine before my food started to come. And then I ate this most delicious beet salad. And I consciously made sure that I tasted all of the delicious flavors. And I looked at all this stuff that was going on around me because in Vegas, it's like a show. In Vegas, you don't even need to pay to see a show because just the characters that are around you, it's a show watching people walk by. So it was really it was entertaining just doing that. And then I love the fish tacos at Joe's Seafood. That's what I get all the time. And I said, I'm going to get something different. So I got branzino, which is a white fish, and it had an olive oil sauce with capers, and the capers were fried. So they were salty and they were crunchy, and the fish was soft and moist, and it was like insanely delicious. And then for dessert, I allowed myself to have, oh, let me do it this way. They have a brownie sundae. So, and you can see I should have taken a picture before I started to eat it, but I started to eat it right away, and you can see the hot fudge and the vanilla ice cream and the brownie. It's one of my most favorite desserts. So I had this dessert, and it was just a wonderful experience. And I left a tip. I left more than I would have normally left. And it was a wonderful day. It was a wonderful meal. And at the end of the day, I didn't feel stressed out because traveling can be super stressful. I didn't feel stressed. I felt happy. I felt grateful. And when we are in a space of gratitude, I think that that is like a direct route to the divine or to spirit, whatever you want to call it, the universe, God, it doesn't matter what you call it. It's like you're hooked up, right? Because no matter what, as human beings, in any given moment, we are hooked up here or we're hooked up here. Now, the way this whole thing is set up is it's way easier to be hooked up here. It's way easier to be negative. It's way easier to procrastinate, to not pay attention to what someone needs, not let someone go in front of you. Let the moment go by where you could give a guy a pencil so he and his partner can do a crossword puzzle on the airplane. Or get frustrated at the older gentleman who's being mean to the 22-year-old respectful young man. To stay out of that fray takes work, but when you do, at the end of the day, you just feel so much better. So it all of this ties in directly into this new thing that I'm working on, and I have that coming out soon. I'm going to be doing another live. I don't even want to tell you when yet. But it's going to be soon, and I'll be coming back live about it. But that's what I wanted to share. And, the other thing that I notice is that when it comes to equipment reliability, stuff in life, reliability is very similar to life. My mentor, John Mowbray, used to say that we manage physical assets at the failure mode level. And really, that goes for us as human beings too, right? We have to figure out what specifically would cause us not to get what we need in life. Procrastination is a big one. And just to identify, for me, yesterday, just to consciously identify and decide that I'm going to live here today and I'm not going to live here. Because trust me, I've had plenty of days where I'm living here, especially when you got a leaf that's a roof that's leaking, you're about to go out of town. And, there were a bunch of other things that happened. It happens to all of us, right? I call it the miseries of everyday life. You can let that get you down, or you can just do your best to manage it, because these things are always going to come. It's part of the human existence. So we can deal with them in the best way we can and live here, or we can walk around being grumpy about it. And I'm going to tell you, I feel fantastic today, and I think it's largely because of the way I consciously decided to conduct myself yesterday. So that's what I got. James, thank you so much, James. Thank you for that. That's all I have to say for today. So please, if any of this resonated with you, go to this URL that you see right down there on the screen. Sign up. It's just to sign up for updates. And thank you so much for your time today. Thank you for sharing your time with me today. I really appreciate it. And I will, without a doubt, be back again live soon with more of this stuff and more reliability stuff. So have a fantastic day. And today, make it a positive one. Thank you, everyone. Bye-bye.